100 days to kickoff. We had the Renaissance Tour last year. I got a really, really good leading candidate for the name of this year's tour. But forget about that. We'll name this year's tour down the road. What are we looking forward to this year? Coast to coast. I think it's being very, very underestimated right now. How much genuine excitement there could be coast to coast. How much relevancy there could be coast to coast. I mean, we'll get to the West Coast in a second. Dude, there are things popping all over the West Coast right now. And that's normally the sleepy coast for college football. Just some things I'm looking forward to. The SEC picture. I mean, we're in a post-Georgia national championship world now. Whomst amongst us under the age of like 40 has ever been able to say that? Answer, no one. So you get to talk about them defending a title, if that's the nomenclature you so choose. I got Lane Kiffin over there with one of the biggest sleeper Heisman candidates in the country in Zach Evans, and maybe just the biggest sleeper team in the country. I got Alabama and Nick Saban having been to the championship game last year, but having multiple Heisman favorites. Bama's got 2 of the preseason top 3 Heisman favorites, at least in terms of odds. New coaches, you need them, you got them. Brian Kelly, Baton Rouge, Billy Napier, Gainesville. We are going to get Alabama versus Texas A&M on a real-life football field in early October. I get to see Sam Pittman's follow-up campaign from bursting on the scene last year. I just went like 8 teams deep. I didn't even mention Tennessee. Haven't even gotten to what Kentucky could do this year in Tennessee. So basically just every team in the conference, there's something to be taken away from there. The 2 most interesting teams in the country to me, though, are not even in the SEC. One of them's Texas, and one of them's Clemson. And that's just one word, one of them, because we're in a hurry around here. And if you grew up in West Central Georgia, one of them is a waste of time. One of them being Texas, because I really want to know how much changed. 40+% of their roster has turned over. How much changed at Texas? Sark could not even answer this question for you, and he's the head coach there, because a lot of it is intangible in nature. A lot of the glue that holds a program together, that adhesive, if you've ever played, if you've ever coached, you've been in a locker room where it existed, and maybe some of you have been in a locker room where it hasn't existed. How do you quantify that? How do you define it? You don't. You just know there's a difference in a team that pulls apart that easy and one that sticks together a little bit more. And I'm sure someone's going to gif what I just did with my hands later. Probably going to be me. If you're listening on podcast, stay on podcast. Take my word for it right now. What if they get into the season? You're looking at their schedule if you're watching on YouTube right now. They play Bama week 2. They'll be a double-digit underdog. Okay, what if they lose that game 31-21? But then they get into the rest of the season and they struggle against West Virginia. Let's say they drop another game to Oklahoma. What if they're trekking for an 8-4 or a 7-5 season? It would be a win-loss improvement over a year ago, but would people really be happy in Austin? Especially when you got Quinn Ewers in there, who most of us presume will be the starting quarterback. At Clemson, I have no clue what to expect. I mean, you've got 2 worlds here, and they're totally divergent. One of them is Clemson reassumes their place at the mountaintop of the ACC, and if that's the case, they're in the playoff conversation, and all's well that ends well there. But if they don't, do you understand what that does? Twofold. Number one, to the Clemson Tigers, you've got people questioning a guy who's already won 2 national championships, and we're legitimately at that point talking about whether that era has come and gone. And even if it has, it's a heck of an era. You find how many programs have won 2 national championships in a 3 or 4 year span. They don't do it very often. But we're in 2022. We're not in 16 or 18. And so from this point moving forward, we would have a lot to talk about. If Clemson is not playing for an ACC championship again, there will rightfully be questions being asked up there. I assume by Dabo Swinney himself. And the other part of that is if either of these teams does click on all cylinders this year, they've got playoff potential just because of the roster alone. If Clemson clicks on all cylinders, if they are in the ACC championship game, stands to reason they're probably in the playoff picture. If ditto happens with Texas, I say this very softly, they would be in the playoff picture. I don't know that people are ready for a college football where Texas is in the playoff picture. We hadn't really seen it yet. I also want to talk to you about sleepers amongst us. And I think I have several of them, but I narrowed it down to 3. I think Arkansas is must-see this year. KJ Jefferson returns at quarterback. You got a lot of people questioning whether you can replace a guy like Treylon Burks, and it's like they know the name Hazelwood. and they saw him play at Oklahoma, but they just don't think he's capable of filling those shoes, and they don't really believe that Arkansas is capable of replicating that 9-4 magic from a year ago. This schedule is brutality. Their out-of-conference game is Cincinnati. Their out-of-conference game is Liberty. They go to Brigham Young. So it's what you would do if you were the AD at Arkansas, but you knew you were leaving tomorrow and you hated your replacement. This is the kind of schedule you'd put together. Having said that, oh, by the way, you got to play neutral site against A&M. But having said that, I want to know what caliber team they're going to have. Arkansas could be 9-3 and one of the best teams in the country this year, given the strength of schedule. And also, it's kind of a referendum on, I think, something a lot of other programs are watching. I've beaten this to death, I understand that, but just once more for the newcomers around here. That guy right there, Sam Pittman, is different resume-wise than any other head coach that was vying for that job, and pretty much any other head coach that anyone else would have hired in the country. Sam Pittman's probably not a fit anywhere else. Shane Beamer, who knows? Maybe he's not a fit anywhere else. Mel Tucker, maybe he's not a fit anywhere else. Those guys are so perfectly positioned, though, the places they're at right now. Culture fits. Going back to that invisible but very present adhesive, if it continues to work for him at a high level. I really believe we're on the precipice of seeing some truly unconventional hiring methodology being inserted into athletic departments all over the country because of the example that is in the process of being set at Arkansas. And so that is a reason why, even if you're not a fan of Arkansas, you need to watch Arkansas this year. North Carolina State, we go right back to that possibly jumbled picture in the ACC. But you see, North Carolina State may be a team that doesn't need Clemson to trip up. North Carolina State looks in the mirror and they say, we don't need them to fall off. We'll just go beat them. Like, we're good enough to where we can still compete for this thing, even if Clemson is good this year. They can be good, but still total loss against us October 1st. So that's big talk. Now, I guess I'm speaking for the Wolfpack there, but they believe that this is the best crew they've had come through there in several years, and they are positioned very well. They've got a very, very veteran team. There is no doubting the identity. The chemistry there, really good. They haven't accomplished anything, so there's no threat of complacency. It's all there. They got a big opportunity this year at North Carolina State. And it's a team that obviously they're not going to grace many national preseason preview magazines. I don't think they mind that. I think they relish that role. North Carolina State's definitely one to watch in the ACC. And out in the Pac-12, how much must Kyle Whittingham love hearing all the talk about USC? And for that matter, Oregon. You know, there are new staffs in place in both outposts there on the coast. And there's a lot of attention on Oregon for a reason. There's a lot of attention on USC for a reason. Kyle Whittingham's been the model of stability in Salt Lake City. Utah won the conference last year, and they body-bagged Oregon twice to do it, and probably feel like they would have done it another half dozen times if you made them do it. But the point is, you had folks like me picking against them. I think I picked Oregon to win both games, and it's like, at what point do you realize that's just a really dumb team to bet against? Utah's a really dumb team to bet against. And then you listen to the conversation, and it will grow louder as we get close to the season. Listen to some of the conversation going into this year, and sure enough, you're going to look at those preseason Pac-12 odds, and you're going to see things like USC not only favored to, I guess, what do we not even have divisions out there anymore so much? We got scheduling divisions, but we don't have divisional play for the conference title game. And what I just said, if it doesn't make sense, it's because it was news that broke this week. We'll talk about it later in the program. But you'll see those odds, and they'll be in USC's favor. Southern Cal plays at Utah October 15th. Southern Cal opened as a short favorite. It's gotten even shorter because people like me have been betting the other side of it. I think it's ditto. It's the same as we see with North Carolina State. You got Utah. Like, how many programs out there are more comfortable and sure of their identity than Utah football? They could not care less about who believes in them and doesn't believe in them. So we got the sleepers. Always fun to talk about them. And you know what, selfishly, you know what else I'm looking forward to this year? Hype videos that feature Late Kick. We got two rules on this show. One, don't lose to food, which pretty much means don't drop a game to rice. And the second is, if you put us in a hype video, 100% of the time, we are putting you on this program. South Carolina, you're up. Roll it, Colin. But I can tell you what the most underrated stadium I've been to is. I found myself standing on the field, looking around saying, people don't talk about Williams-Brice Stadium nearly as much as they should.
One of the greatest entrances in all of college football.
They got one of the best home field advantages from the game.
Hit that 3:30 Eastern time kick, so by the time you wrap it up, it's nighttime, and that's student section.
The rain breaks out in Columbia. On the move, dynamite, touchdown, South Carolina.
South Carolina fans more than do their part on game day to make that place a really, really intimidating environment. When they wave those towels, when they play Sandstorm, when it's third down and 3 in Williams-Brice Stadium, you can't hear anything.
Pure, unbridled passion here at Williams-Brice. They know they've got something special here.
I went home and I said, Dear Diary, Williams-Brice Stadium impressed me today. We were a little surprised that they included the Dear Diary part. But yes, shout out to our friends there at South Carolina. You put us in a hype video, we're putting you on the show. Those are just some of the many things I'm looking forward to this season in college football. And like I told you, I think we've got the name for the Late Kick Tour. I think we've got the name. I'm not ready to unveil it yet, but I think we got the name. So stay tuned on that.